All right, so just to get everybody on the same page, I'll make this part quick, but PureLink's been around for we're closing in on 25 years fairly soon here. So we've been doing this a while, and the company is actually born out of engineers who were trying to solve problems. And some of the first problems that we solved were, if you remember back in the day, the conversion of analog to digital. So PureLink had a part in that, especially HDCP key management and EDID management. We're actually the guys who figure all that out for large scale deployments. Many other things that we engineered, but all right, so we got different sub brands here. Our media access brand that our 4K 60 cross-platform matrix switching system that is just about anything in, anything out, from DisplayPort, HDMI, DVI. We do fiber extension, HD-based T extension, redundant power supplies, hot swappable cards, Dante-I/O. So take a look at that. The Pure Media has been around for a very long time. That's our 4K 30 cross-platform switching that's been in a lot of applications, including military command centers and medical and other critical viewing scenarios. PureStream is our AV over IP line. That's what we're looking at today, and that includes our encoders, decoders, streaming encoders, cameras, Dante. We do actually have network switches, and the fact is we've been doing AV over IP network switches longer than even Netgear. So that'll be covered in another session because it takes a little bit, but we do have the world's first AV over IP purpose-built network switches. We have quite a number of them, and they're TAA compliant, as is Pure Media and Media Access. Icon is our control automation platform. This is an award-winning control system because of a number of reasons. One is all of our touch panels have integrated controllers in them, making your SKU count less. You just buy the touch panel and it's your controller. But really, more importantly, is the programming environment. You create your control automation with mouse clicks and English sentences. So it's extremely fast and easy, but you don't give up anything as in terms of functionality. Like I'm sure some of you, I've done Crestron and AMX and QSYS programming, so I know a little about what it takes to do that. And I think I highly encourage you to look at Icon because we designed it to solve a lot of the headaches of those platforms. So please come to those classes and try out the Icon control. HD Tools is our line of basically Swiss Army stuff, anywhere from fiber, HD-based T extenders to converters and scalers and DAs and smaller switches. So it covers a lot of ground. HD Tools. And finally, Total Wire is our line of premium cables. So, the world of cables is a bloodbath. We deal only in the top end premium cables. So we do Cat 6A, Cat 7, we do fiber. So if you're looking for lifetime warranty premium, cables, that's the Total Wire brand from PureLink. Okay, so that covers that. This is our Infocom Best of Show winner, our T10 touch panel with integrated controller. I sort of mentioned that a moment ago with our easy language. Again, mouse clicks and just writing English sentences creates your program. You need to see this, so please sign up for upcoming Icon classes, get some Icon demo gear. It's going to make your life a lot easier. And when things are easier, they can be faster. We definitely can get you up and running faster. And if it's faster, there's less labor involved. So your line item goes down on implementation, install. And therefore your quote goes down, so you get it. You can do this better, faster, cheaper, all three. So we defy those, cliches there, but take a look at this. All right, we've got tons of clients. And this is just a cross section of them, anywhere from manufacturing to entertainment, military, command centers, large venue, transportation, gas and oil, and just tons of other applications. So we're around, and our pedigree is reliability. So we'd love for you to try out some gear and experience that for yourself. All right, so I'm going to jump into the products now. The first thing we have, and this is kind of a reference slide for when you get this, to remind you that AV over IP encoders and decoders actually solve a lot of different situations, not just distribution. That's probably the most common scenario you see as you go into a sports bar, fitness center, things like that, and you see somebody taking a source, a cable box or satellite, and distributing it around the facility. But maybe unknown application that AV over IP is really good for is kiosk scenarios, digital signage expansion. But if we stick on extension for a second, so that would be where you have a source extended to a display. You may commonly be dealing with just extenders, maybe HD-based or fiber or whatnot. But here's what AV over IP brings to the table. If you go that route of technology, I can do it without a network switch, no different than HD-based extension. I can take an encoder and a decoder and connect them together. I can have over 100 meters of extension, and it varies a little bit depending on the product, but it can be 120 to 140 meters of extension. That's pretty respectable extension distance over CAT. But you can also choose with a lot of our products from the T300 and up, which I'll show you in a moment. You can do fiber. So I can do fiber extension. Technically, it's an AV over IP product, but I can plug them in point to point without a network and still get, hundreds of meters of extension. Now that's without a network switch. So if you're not paying attention to anything I said before, listen to this next part. Okay, so if I extend over a network, one of the major advantages of using AV over IP as an extender is I now can access the diagnostic API of the encoder and decoder. So unlike HD-based T, now I can get all sorts of information about my encoder and decoder, what the resolution's set to, what my bit rate's set to. I can even detect if there's a source connected to the encoder and what the resolution of the incoming source is and what the audio format of that source is. So that's some pretty valuable information when you're doing system management. On the decoder side, I can get the EDID table from the display. So that means I can determine, is there a display actively connected to the decoder, and I can get its brand and model all from just talking to the encoder and decoder over a network switch. So that is something that you can get using AV over IP encoders and decoders as an extender over a network. All right, so please think about that. I know when I did integration, that I would have been thrilled to hear that. All right, so distribution is pretty common. Basically, it's one source to many displays. And of course, switching many sources to one display, or matrix switching many sources to many displays. And if you ever wondered why there's a lot of manufacturers, including PureLink, that have standardized on 1G networks for AV over IP, it's the advantage over SDVoE is I can put a lot more sources on the network, and then there will be arguments about, well, SDVoE looks better. I think that when you get into real practical applications of real world sources and what you need to do, we find nobody's complaining about image quality. And a vast majority of our products are standardized on the JPEG 2000 codec, which is very high quality codec. Some manufacturers market it under proprietary names like Pixel Perfect, but under the hood, you're seeing JPEG 2000. Okay, flexibility and scalability, AV over IP, encoders and decoders offer you the really unparalleled options here, because what I point out is I can take an extender system and I can convert it to a distribution or switching or matrix system at any point in time during the design or 2 years after the design or install or so on. So you're not locked down. So with 2 SKUs, an encoder and decoder, I can do extenders, distribution, switching, and matrixing, and I can change systems with those SKUs at any time. And if I have an issue with any of the endpoints, I can easily just swap out that one piece, as opposed to HD-based switchers or just hybrid or proprietary switchers where I got to pull the whole thing and replace it. So that's an advantage. And also, like I mentioned before, over 1G networks, JPEG 2000 codec, I can do a large number of I/O. So it's not unheard of. And we have a lot of applications where there's dozens of sources and dozens of displays. I mean, well over 3 digits on either side. So it is possible to do that with AV over IP and really do it a lot easier than you would think. We talked about diagnostics already. Once you have a network switch, you can talk to every single endpoint and get a lot of information. You can change things remotely. And of course, that leads to control. As we mentioned, we have our own line, the Icon Easy Control. So that obviously we have drivers and seamless integration of our control system with our endpoints, but we do offer Crestron drivers and QSYS drivers, and we have an API. I know Savvy has drivers and Control4 as well. But if for any reason, whatever platform you use for control, there isn't a driver, the API is very simple, and we support you through the whole process if you ever need help with that. All right, last but not least, our products have been intentionally designed to be the easiest to install and operate against the rest of the pack. So the first item is, which we'll talk about a little more as we look at some of these products, but they work right out of the box. So if you buy an encoder and decoder, unbox them, plug them together, and hook up a source and display, you're going to have a picture. You're not going to have to pull out some piece of software or read a manual or watch a video. It just works. The other thing that we have been doing for years, we led the charge here on pre-configuring your system at time of order. So this is something unique to PureLink. So when you order a system, let's say you got 10 encoders and 10 decoders, and you know your IP addressing and your channel addressing and all that, we will configure everything for you at time of order. We also offer optional no signal logo at time of order if you want to do that. The products do come with a PureLink logo when there's no signal, but if you want to put in yours or your end users, or if you are the end user, that can be done at the time you order, and there's no charge for this. So just buy the product, send us your IP address and your logo image file, and we label everything and give you a spreadsheet. So when it shows up, you can literally hook everything up on a job site and it's up and running. And we actually have a case study on our website. I think it's called the Armory. And if you look that one up, you'll see we had an integrator who, this has never happened, I'm sure, to you, but the customer needed the product up and running in a couple of days and he had no time. So he used our pre-configuration services because we already QA the product anyway. So it's easy for us to get everything set up, labeled and boxed and out the door. And then it was sent right to the job site. And it was, I think, a mid-size arena. And the integrator put everything up and pictures just popped up everywhere. So it just worked with no issues. Okay, and then you'll see pioneered the AV over IP channel change. So when we look at some products, that'll become more clear, but it made AV over IP much easier to install and operate than had ever been done before. So let's move on and take a look at that. The first product up is our VIP T450. This is our latest and greatest. It is a TAA compliant 4K 60 product running on JPEG 2000, so ultra low latency, but it also supports Dante. So this will be the only encoder decoder system we currently have that supports Dante, but you can take the audio from either the output of the encoder or the input of the decoder, and you can send it out onto the Dante network. So whichever one works better for you. And then I can also bring Dante audio in at the encoder or at the decoder. So you literally have every option of how you want to manage your audio. You can just use the regular audio transport built in to the product. It also, not only can you move around and do layered switching of video and audio with the T450, but I can do analog audio insertion and analog audio extraction and Dante audio insertion and extraction on both sides, encoder and decoder. So there's basically nothing you can't do as in terms of audio management. You've got cat and fiber transports on the decoders. That's more commonly where you'll need the longer distances because displays could be outside, they could be spread, across campuses and floors and buildings and so on. So we offer fiber on the decoders on that. Image rotation, video wall capability, and very large I/O count, 999 encoders. We'd certainly love to see a job where you need that many, and 65,000 decoders. And that's an enormous, frankly, absurd number. Why is that possible? That number is possible because in the world of networks, depending on how you set up or what type of network you have, determines how many IP addresses are available. And because the decoders ingest what's on the network, they're not really loading the network in the same way as an encoder loads a network. So it is possible. It would take a smart IT guy to do this, but it's not impossible to do. Okay, so just to cover layered switching in a little more detail, unless you change it, the way the product works, and this is true for the rest of the products that we'll look at after this one, is when you switch a decoder to look at a different encoder, it's switching all the signal formats, video, audio, RS-232, infrared, and USB, but it is possible to configure the boxes so that you switch these independently of each other. So therefore, I could have video from one encoder and audio from a different encoder go to a decoder. So it's getting its video and audio from two different sources and putting them out on the display. I can also set and forget my RS-232 layer. So maybe I'm using that for display control, a control system. So I might have an encoder in a rack near an icon controller as an example, and I want to shut off all the TVs simultaneously. I can use our encoder decoder system as an RS-232 distribution and send an off command to as many decoders as I would like to simultaneously, and therefore shut off all those displays. Same thing with infrared and of course USB as well. Okay, front panel diagnostics. So this varies a little bit per product, but we always have LEDs. Deeper detail will be in the manuals, but we try to make sure that there's information available to you on the boxes themselves. And of course, through the APIs, you can get to a much deeper and richer set of diagnostics. And of course, our Icon control system works seamlessly, and we have drivers for other control systems as well. Okay, so that's the T450. T400, this is also TAA compliant, and you'll see we've got a wall plate here. One thing I want to get out of the way is you'll notice that it's 2-gang, and that is because it is technically impossible for 4K 60 444 JPEG 2000 chipset to fit in a single gang. So if anybody has a single gang AV over IP product, it cannot be 4K 60. So if they're marketing it that way, somebody's making a mistake. But we would put it in a single gang if we could. We know that's important, and we tried, but it can't be done. So it's in a 2-gang, and you'll see we've got the HDMI input with USB 2.0 on this wall plate, and then audio insertion, which can be done one of two ways. You can have automatic audio override of the HDMI audio, or you can have it manual, where that's a setting in the product. But the factory default is automatic audio insertion. The wall plate runs off PoE 802.3 AF, which is the lowest power standard of PoE. And in fact, our products use approximately half of that standard, which is 15 watts. So we're at about 7 watts per box. And for those who are engineering and designing systems, that means we're down around 21, 23 BTU per device. So we don't have any fans. There's no need for fans. So that's one less failure point. So the name of the game is always use the lowest power possible. So I think you'll find we equal or beat many of the brands out there. All right, again, cat and fiber transport and many surround sound formats, including Dolby. And by the way, this does support Dolby Vision, if that's important to you. Video wall, image rotation, the decoder has a scaling engine that you can set and lock the output so that whatever your display resolution is, you don't have time between images that is unnecessarily long switch times. So we talked about the channel change a couple slides ago. So if you look, you'll see there's a 2-digit display on here, and actually the wall plate has 3-digit display. So what that is every AV over IP encoder decoder system, what it's really doing under the hood is the decoder is subscribing to a multicast stream. And for those of you familiar with some other brands, they do that in what I would say is definitely a more complex way than the way we do it. You need a piece of software. There can be other mechanisms you need to handle. You may need a control system. Otherwise, you can't operate the product. In our case, our channel system, which we invented and introduced back in 2014, is rather simple on the surface. We're just remapping the interface, the user interface. Instead of you having to think about multicast IP addresses, we just present you with a channel number, because I hope we've all used satellite or cable boxes or TVs with channels changing in our lives. So we all are familiar with that kind of interface. So for example, if you have a multicast IP address of 239.1.100.1, just as an example, we would just call that channel 1. And as you increment up in the multicast IP address, it's channel 2 or channel 3 or channel 4, all the way up to channel 1000. So now what that does is it makes setup lightning fast because I don't need any software to configure the encoder. If you look, there's a plus minus button on the encoder, which can be locked out. So once I set it to the broadcast channel I want, which is really a multicast IP stream, I lock it, and every encoder has to have a unique channel number. Then, so that's in setup. So in operation, 99% of what you or your end user is going to do is change channels on the decoder. It's just like changing channels on a cable box or a TV. So it's familiar to them. So now you're in home theater or sports bars or a restaurant or house of worship or so on, and you don't want this difficult system, and maybe you can't or don't have a control system. Now you can operate without it. I just change the channel on the decoder, and that's it. Okay, so you'll see that through our few other of our model lines of our VIP encoders and decoders. But the channel display now makes AV over IP far more friendly for many applications. So if you have a restaurant where there's TVs at all the tables, usually it's a sports bar. Now the client, the patron, can just pick a different channel to watch. Same thing at fitness centers and more. All right, so hopefully I explained the channel topology clear enough. The good news is, let's say you're like, well, that's not going to work for me because the decoder is going to be buried behind the displays. It doesn't matter. Our API allows channel changing, and it's a very, very simple command. So I can use Crestron, QSys, Icon, Extron, Control4, Savvy, Savant, you name it. I can easily control any of our VIP products and do this operation. Okay, I got a question from Adolfo. I hope you're saying your name right, but 8x8 video wall. So what does that mean? So the decoders, you have to have one decoder per display. So if you have an 8x8 video wall, you do the math, that's 64 displays. That's the maximum size video wall that we recommend. And I even struggle with that, to be honest with you, because when you stretch an image across 64 displays, you may find it's softer than you may desire, but the product's capable of doing it. So the way that works is there's a decoder on each of those displays, and it looks at the component of the image that that display is responsible for. So I can easily go into these boxes and say, hey, you're a decoder and you're a part of, let's say, a 4x4 video wall, and you're the very lower left one. And that's a very easy process in our product. So I send it a line of code to tell it that, and now it only shows that part of the image. And you would go through the same process on the remaining 15 display decoders. All right, so I hope that's a sufficient explanation. The 400, this is a non-TAA compliant product. What does that do? It makes it a little less expensive, so that might be important to you. But other than that, they're extremely similar. This one does not offer the wall plate, but we'll talk about that in the market applications in a moment. But its specs otherwise are identical to the T400. So basically, one is government military to the T400, and this is the non-TAA option. All right, both of these are 4K 60, 444 with Dolby, DTS, Dolby Vision, all that stuff. And then we get down to our 4K 30 product. And, nothing speaks louder than what people actually wind up buying. And this 4K 30 apparently is still quite viable. This is our best-selling VIP product. And it's also been around a very long time. I think it was 2016 or 2017 we introduced this, and it's in a lot of 24/7, 365 mission critical applications. I can't say too much about this, but I participated in some Army base installations where their command centers, used high numbers of these throughout that command center. I think there was about 140 total encoders and decoders that went into that Army base. And that install was done in 2018. So it was over 6 years ago, because it was the beginning of 2018. And that system has been running 24 hours a day since then. So hopefully that's a testament to you of the reliability. We've gotten no service calls after the install was done. Okay, so this is basically a 4K 30 cat and fiber transport. Again, you can mix and match. And by the way, I hadn't mentioned this yet, but those are 1G transports. We sell the SFP modules. So, and the modules we have are TAA compliant. And we offer both multi-mode and single mode SFP modules that you can use. So if you need some encoders cat and some fiber and some decoders cat and some fiber, you can do that. And there's no difference in the performance or functionality. It just changes the distance performance. And in some cases, you use fiber not because of distance, but because of requirements. As those who on this webinar do military, you can have something 2 feet apart and it has to be fiber. So we do that all day long. All right, again, rich API, diagnostics, control modules, our icon system works flawlessly, and of course the channel changing invention here. And you can see we've got front panel controls. Those can be locked out, and lots of LEDs on the front, and audio insertion, extraction, IR extension, RS-232. And by the way, when you do RS-232, a real world application here is I can send control commands over the network and send them out the RS-232 port to my displays or whatever other devices I want to control RS-232. So I can extend as well. I can input an RS-232 signal at an encoder or a decoder and have it come out the complementary side. So I can do RS-232 extension, or I can do RS-232 commands over the network into the encoder or decoder. So all possible options there. Okay, so here's our 200. Now this actually was the first AV over IP product we introduced in 2014. This has the channel changing, but it's on-screen display. So when you look at your display, you'll see the channel information appear. So we hadn't put it also on the box. And by the way, the other ones that we've shown you, you can do that. You can have on-screen display of not only the channel, but anything you want. Through the API commands, I can write any message that I choose to be displayed on the decoder output. So something to think about. That's especially useful in command centers or medical. Maybe I want to know what my source is. So I might put on the display cam 1 or, Southeast building, or, media player or laptop 5, or you get the idea. Okay, so this is JPEG 2000 KVM. Everything we've looked at is KVM, including this. The big difference here is this is a 1080p 60 product, where everything else was either 4K 30 or 4K 60. So the 200, if you don't need 4K and it's a matter of keeping costs down, you can go to the 200 series and do 1080p distribution. This would be a whole another session and probably a pretty fun, heated debate. But when we have done labs where we've shown people various content and resolution, and you can have a very good looking 1080p 60 signal and a very bad looking 4K 60 signal, and people will prefer the 1080p 60, and it's content or transport. So feel free to email me and we can talk about that, or call me. But there's still a lot of application for 1080p 60. Many of the top integrators in the world have affirmed that. So, if you're doing fitness centers or waiting rooms, things like that, this is probably fine. Okay, last up, the 100 series. This is a diversion from the rest of what I've just shown you. The 100 series is our only product that's based on an H.264 codec. So you still see the channel functionality, but why have an H.264 product that seems antiquated, right? Well, here's why. The bandwidth that JPEG 2000 signals need starts about, if it's 1080p 60, for example, you're still in about the 150 megabits. And if you go up to 4K 60 full bore, you're going to be at about 850 megabits per stream. H.264 only puts out on a 1080p 60 signal about 25 megabits. So you're using a lot less bandwidth on the network. And you might have to do that, or you might want to do that, or you might have, tons and tons of sources, or you might have other things on the network. So this is the solution to that. The downside to H.264, where JPEG 2000 has extreme low latency, H.264 takes a while to process video and send it out. So you're looking more at about 400 milliseconds of latency. So that, might sound like a deal breaker on paper, but there's a lot of applications that it just doesn't matter. So where does it not matter? If you're doing signal distribution where the time the original content takes to arrive is unnoticeable. So let's say it's a media player and you're just distributing advertising or digital signage. Nobody's going to know that the signal took 400 milliseconds to get to the other end. And there's other applications, but in those cases, that's what the 100 is for. So if you're doing, fitness centers and you're just trying to show all sorts of different TV stations around the fitness center, or you're trying to do advertising or messaging at a college campus or other educational facility or waiting room and things of that nature, the 100 series is perfectly fine. Okay, so that wraps up all of our encoder decoders. I'm not going to get deep into this, but this is basically applications and products that would fit in the different applications. So please look at this, and if you guys have questions, reach out to me, call me or email me. But again, you'll see kiosk applications and lots of different scenarios. So let's look at the streaming encoder. So this is a very different type of encoding. This is where I encode to what we call soft endpoints. There's not necessarily a piece of hardware on the other end to decode it. There's an exception to that I'll mention, but let's say you're a house of worship and you want to broadcast on Sunday to people who can't leave their house or can't leave the hospital. They can watch services on YouTube or Facebook or maybe other platforms. The Stream 200 makes that insanely easy. The advantage to the 200 is you set it up one time and it works from there on. So it's got a built-in web interface. You just put in, and we have videos how to do this, but you just put in your destination URL and key, and it will stream. You see there's an active button on there, so I can stop or start my streams, and there's a logo, a splash screen that'll go up if you're not streaming, so people will see something. And it can do up to 3 simultaneous output streams. So if you look at this application diagram, and again, everyone's going to get this PowerPoint so you can study this deeper, but it's basically, you have to think that it's any source that has an HDMI output. So that's a big list. It could be your laptop, it could be a camera, it could be a broadcast switcher, a media player, anything with an HDMI. It could be your Xbox. And you put it into the streaming encoder and it goes out to the world, wherever it can go all the way across. And we've literally tested if people, receive these streams in Asia. So it's a true broadcast to the masses type product. There's a lot of applications you might not think of where this would be useful. So we mentioned House of Worship. This is also extremely popular in large venue where they're trying to get content all around a stadium or an arena. This is done all the time. A presenter, a podcaster may want to live stream on YouTube. Fitness centers, now I call them fitness centers, but my son's dojo, he does Taekwondo. They do classes using the VIP Stream 100 for people who can't get to the facility for any given reason. So they watch the instructions live from home. Digital signage is another obvious one. You go through malls or retail stores and you want to move content to multiple displays. Of course, gyms, makes sense. And the one that may be the least obvious is live data analytics. And what that example would be is a manufacturing plant that has multiple buildings. For example, I'm in Georgia, and in Northwest Georgia is the largest, it's the epicenter of flooring. And if you ever heard of Shaw or Mohawk, they have literally 60 buildings, and the managers share throughput data. So they actually use Stream 200s so that they can distribute data across buildings that are miles and miles apart. All right, Dante, I'm going to go a little faster because it's almost 3 p.m. Eastern here, but we have a number of Dante products. We have install-based products and we have, non-install. So we'll look at the install first, but we've got interfaces that allow you to take 16 balanced analog inputs and 16 outputs, and they can be unbalanced also, and convert them to and from Dante. And in the process, you can also put them through DSP, and you can do compression and EQ and automatic gain control and feedback control, auto mixing and echo cancellation. So there's a ton of DSP capabilities. We also have a USB interface, so you can do USB to Dante. So very powerful box, 16 in, 16 out, and we have that in an 8 in, 8 out, and a 4 in and 4 out. So we have the different sizes for different needs and different budgets to manage analog to digital audio conversions in both directions into the Dante network along with DSP. And you can also take Dante sources, run them through the DSP in these boxes, and put them back in Dante so they stay in the digital world. So you do have that as well. So that's a pretty powerful additional feature. Then we have dongles. This is very commonly used as a laptop interface. So I can take 2 channels of Dante and bring it into my laptop, and I can take 2 channels from my laptop and send them out to the Dante network. So lots of different applications. I'm sure many of you already have ideas about that. And in Pro Audio, you might have balanced XLR inputs and outputs on your audio mixer or codecs or recording devices, media players, and so on. So we offer you both analog audio out to Dante and Dante out to analog. All right, so we list a number of applications here. I'll let you look at these offline so I don't go too far over time, but corporate, we've got conference rooms, very common now to have Dante interfacing with audio amplifiers and codecs, auditoriums, public address systems in education and medical, as well as their auditoriums and house of worship, distribution around the sanctuary and breakout rooms and narthex and nursery and whatnot. And of course, Dante is extremely popular in broadcast and sound reinforcement, and therefore also staging and rental and hotel AV. All right, last up, and then we're wrapping up. We have a number of cameras that have streaming outputs. That's not all they do. but they qualify for this webinar because they put out RTSP or RTMP or NDI in different versions depending on the model. So you can stream directly out of these cameras, and when you use streaming outputs, you can also connect a microphone to the audio input of the camera and send both video and audio out onto the network. If you don't want or need or can use the network, we do have SDI output and HDMI output, and all of our cameras use standard Visca and Pelco control over either RS-232 or LAN. The 200 is PoE powered, so if you do use it off a network switch, you just run one cable, one CAT cable, and that's it. And this also has USB 3.0 out, so you can go directly to a codec or your laptop to use it with Teams or Zoom, or go to meeting, go to webinar, Google Meet, and so on. Of course, because it's Visca standard, it's very easily controlled by any control system you can think of, including our own Icon control system. Cam 100 NDI, this is really the difference here is outputs, digital zoom. These all use professional grade PTZ mechanisms. So all the cameras you're seeing today are in what's called follow presenter class, which means if you're using a joystick controller, you have very fine granularity control over the speed and accuracy of the movement of the camera. So if you're house of worship, for example, or auditorium or presentation hall, and you're trying to follow a speaker with a joystick controller, you will find that this camera stands up to cameras many times more costly than this camera. So we really encourage you to try out these cameras. They fare extremely well in shootouts against some of the top names in IMAG and Pro Video from JVC, Sony, Blackmagic, and so on. And the last one up is the Cam 30. This one is just HDMI and USB 2.0 along with RTSP and RTMP outputs. So it's got less connectivity features. So it's, the least lower price than the other ones. Okay, so that's the cameras. The markets I've got listed here. You guys can take a look at that. If you have questions, please reach out to us. I know I'm over time. Very important to wrap up our test drive program. Anything we have, 30-day trial, get it in your shop or in your application, try it out. If you're happy with it, keep it. Do not worry, we will charge your card or send you a bill or send it back. But we want you to experience these products, not just take our word for it. So please take advantage of this test drive program. I think you'll find once you get the product in your hand and you also experience our team of engineers and technicians to help you, that you'll be very satisfied. Also follow us, latest news. There's really no better way than to go on our website and register your email. So PureLinkAV.com. Otherwise, I would recommend LinkedIn. Follow us there. You certainly can follow us on X or Facebook or Instagram. And we have lots of videos on YouTube as well that you can check out. Instructional videos and product overviews and things like that. Please take advantage of the test drive. We offer lots of pre-sales engineering support. We'll look at CAD drawings. We'll let you know what products make the best sense for what you're trying to do. And we'll also let you know if there's something else you should be looking at, not PureLink. We want to earn your trust, and that really requires, if we don't have what you need, we're going to tell you that. But if we do have it, we would like you to try it out. So thanks for your time. Please reach out to us, try out our products, and definitely come to our Icon Control Automation webinars as well. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day, and I hope to see you at the next webinar.